Morning. Jeez, it's a rough start. It's an early morning, 6 a.m. here. When I get up, for something. Let me close all the distractions. It is a travel day as well. So today we are off to London. I haven't been to London since Feb 2020. Now, if you recall, it was an odd time. I remember sitting there in Heathrow, about to fly home, and we're looking at the news, and everyone's like making jokes about this new virus. And then things sort of escalated. And here we are, 5 years later. Yeah, so anyway, first trip back to London. If you're not from Australia, you're probably aware we are on the other side of the world to absolutely everything. So it's a 14-hour flight. Well, got to leave early, drive an hour and a half up to the airport, 14-hour flight to Dubai, hang around Dubai for a couple of hours, 7-hour flight to London. I'll get there door to door when you got two hops, about 24 hours, 25 hours, something like that. Chris is there. How's the weather? Nah, it's a stupid question. How's the weather? Come on, please. I know, without looking. Although Thomas is in Birmingham. He says, Birmingham is unexpectedly warm. Do you have 2 digits in the temperature? What is the temperature in London? What am I getting myself in for? The problem is, it's not a problem, but we're going to London and then to Iceland, and I expect Iceland to be cold. So you've got to dress for Iceland. But the stuff that I wear when you're like freezing and below is quite different to the stuff you wear when it's like 5, 6, 7 degrees. So we have big suitcases. Let's have a look. Where are we? London, 13. Wow, you got 2 numbers in your temperature. That's impressive. Let's see what the forecast. Cloud, rain, rain, rain. Cloud, 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 rain. What's that yellow thing behind the cloud? Oh, yeah. That's what it is. Someone says we do. Said 14 earlier today. I am seeing on this forecast. Oh, holy. Today, a high of 19 for London. What's going on there? Jeez. Should pack my thongs. Look, everyone excited. Thomas basked in the sun for his lunch break. I like the fact that that's newsworthy. And set off my hay fever for the first time in 2025. Yeah, Alistair, 19. Craigie. Wow, okay. So there's that. Where's that? So actually, let's go through events and things. Yeah, so we'll get to London Saturday, your time, somewhere in the middle of the day. I have some meetings with our friends in high places on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm going to be in Oxford. I'm doing a talk at the University of Oxford on Wednesday. It is on my events list on the front of my blog. It is an open event, so if you are in or around Oxford, that one's there. That's organised by my good friend Kieran Martin, who some of you know. Kieran started the NCSC in the UK. When did you start that? Must be 10 years plus ago. Anyway, so I'll be there. Scott's there. G'day, Scott. I'm going to see Scott on Tuesday. Bring the warm. You'll be sweating, mate. 19 degrees. You'll need a cold one. We'll have to find some cold ones. Richard's here as well. Only 8C on the coast. Oh, yeah. 8's not good. So anyway, we'll be at University of Oxford on Wednesday doing an event there. That's a free open event. That's I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think they'll get a good crowd there. Next day, we're going to go to Iceland. So we will be in Iceland. I think we might have an event in Iceland. There seems to be a little bit of misinterpretation as to what it means to come and do a pro bono event. We're trying to sort that out in advance. So if there is an event Monday week in Reykjavik, we'll get back to you on that. We'll be there, and then we'll be off to Dublin. I don't have anything public planned in Dublin yet. If anyone does want to stand up a open community event, let me know. We've got a couple of days there in Dublin. So that is that. And then we will come home for a day, literally 24 hours and a little bit, and then go to Perth. We now have an event in Perth. Now, let me get the exact term right. This is a Microsofty event, the Microsoft Student Accelerator Meetup. Scott, I'll reply to you. I'll reply to your message as soon as I finish this. Actually, you know what I'll do, Scott? I'll just forward you something. And then I can talk to you after this. Jeez. If people could see, Scott, the things that we talk about offline, which one are you? Which Scott? Jeez, a lot of Scots. You notice that? I've got to not mix up the Scots. Okay, there you go, mate. We'll chat about that later. Where are I now? Yes, Microsoft. So, Perth. So, on the 14th of April in Perth, we are doing a Microsoft Student Accelerator meetup. Famous security expert, Troy Hunt. Lessons from billions of breach records. Now, little inside bit of insight. I give every event I do the same title, and then I figure out what I'm going to talk about at the time. I call them all Lessons from Billions of Breach Records. It's the same in Oxford. And I will probably have a slide deck with some interesting stuff on it. I just don't, like for Oxford, can I talk about Shit Express? Does everyone know what Shit Express is? All right, if you haven't seen this before, this is hilarious. I have gone and spoken about this at many different law enforcement agencies as well and taken them through this. I think the ones that I have a good understanding of where their level of sense of humor is, go to shitexpress.com. It is safe for work, so long as you can say that word, at work. A simple way to send a piece of shit around the world. Imagine all the people who annoy you most: an irritating colleague, a school teacher, your ex-wife, a filthy boss, a jealous neighbor, that successful former classmate, or those pesky haters. What if you could send them a smelly surprise? There's nothing that can replace the expression on the recipient's face after opening the bag of shit. Now, anyway, the relevancy to Shit Express and me going around doing talks is that there's a 4-step process when you want to send someone a box of shit. Number one is you choose an animal. Different animals produce different types of excrement. We particularly love organic, wet horse poop. Now, it turns out it's all horse shit. We'll come back to that. Number 2, give us an address. Number 3, pick a stick. And number 4, and this is where the rub is, pay and stay anonymous. The service is 100% anonymous. We will never reveal your identity, even if you pay by credit card or PayPal. Now, have you ever paid by credit card or PayPal for anything and felt that you were anonymous? They had a data breach. Bad example, bad term. Data everywhere. And there are many interesting, insightful things that you could glean from the data. One of them being that they only ever sent horseshit. So somewhere in here, they were talking about like pigs and donkeys and whatever else. But the data shows it is all horseshit. Occasionally when I do this, people are like, what? So it's like, do they send human shit? It's like, nah, that would be weird. It's all just horseshit. Anyway. So, can I talk about that at Oxford? Go to this prestigious university and talk about sending boxes of shit to people. Anyway, we got on that topic because I tend to just pick and choose bits, put them on the side, and depending on the audience, and apparently this is an audience that's very engaged and active, which is good, it will just become a lot more interactive. I feel that going and speaking to a bunch of students in Australia is like that as well. I think if we get the Iceland event over the line, I feel like it will be a more demure audience, just purely based on my experiences in the Nordics. Iceland's still part of the Nordics, isn't it? It's not Scandinavia. It's a Nordic country. So we'll see. Let's look at the comments here. I think people like the shit story. Fritz is in Germany. G'day, Fritz. Scott says if my chat history is ever leaked, we're doomed. We do have these regular. Wow, don't you think this is time that maybe we just delete the history? Mind you, I've had another discussion this morning that, without getting into the detail, I think is partly explainable by the fact that the chat history was automatically deleting and some of the context of things that were said quite some time ago got completely lost. So there are pros and cons to deleting your chat history. I don't think there's any con with Scott and I doing it though. Stephen Jones says, it's Troy's way of saying, who the F is Scott Helm? I have packed some of those stickers too. So if you're around me, I do have some Scott Helm stickers. For some reason, I have way more Scott Helm stickers than have I been pwned stickers. So I will bring some of those with me as well. Richard, so did it really hit the fan? So it really did hit the fan. Yeah, right. Okay, Shit Express. I'd love someone to actually try and use that service and see what happens. The funny thing is, like somewhere in here, they say, we deliver packages to all countries in the world. You can send a box of shit anywhere in the world. And I find that fascinating for many reasons. One of which is you try getting a banana into Australia and see how you go with that. It's not going to work out well for you. They will find it and you will be fine. So how you get a box of shit, unless they have some sort of affiliate model, like if you had affiliates in Australia that could obtain local shit and send it out for a fee, of course, that would make sense. Oh. Actually, I'm glad Scott's here because we can get on this Cloudflare discussion, and he, like me, do have a lot of time spent with Cloudflare. Now, I don't know. There are many fascinating things about this story we're about to tell. Let's just go to Cloudflare blog, and I'll find where it is. Just as a recap, I've been using Cloudflare. It must be almost 10 years now, wrapped around Have I Been Pwned. And I largely started using them to try and keep abuse of the underlying services out. So being able to do things like, what's the word I'm looking for here? The site I'm looking for. Being able to do things like put rate limits on individuals coming to the service or block DDoS attacks. I regularly get notifications from Cloudflare about DDoS attacks on Have I Been Pwned. And there's just these like ridiculous volumes of traffic coming through, you know, like tens or hundreds of thousands of requests per second, and they get requests to the homepage. And I'm like, what are you doing, mate? Like it's all cached on the edge. I don't care how many times you request it, Cloudflare can serve it. But anyway, the point is they do good stuff sitting in there in the middle of that connection, making sure that the bad stuff stays out. And of course, then there's all these other things that they've implemented over the years that we make really extensive use of. Our Cloudflare workers, R2, storage for cache. What's the word they use? It's like that persistent cache which replicates everywhere. Loads and loads of things that we use on Cloudflare. Really important part of what we do. Really important part of what Scott does for Report Your ROI as well. So all of that is wonderful stuff. The sun has just come up. Hang on. Shut that door. Wait. Wonderful stuff. So one of the things that Cloudflare has been involved in with myself for many, many years is pwned passwords. Now, pwned passwords is our massive corpus of password hashes from previous data breaches. That sits there in Cloudflare, massively edge cached. We're serving 10 billion requests a month from organizations like, say, Telstra in Australia. Now, I can pick Telstra as an example because they're calling us async. You can literally see the request in your dev tools. You go to Telstra, which is our largest telco, and then you go to put in a password. And as you type the password, it hits Have I Been Pwned's API. Has the password been sent in a data breach before? And it does it using a really cool anonymity model, which, without going through the whole thing again, hashes the entire password, takes the first 5 characters of the 40-character SHA-1 hash, sends it to Have I Been Pwned. Have I Been Pwned comes back with everything that possibly matches, and then the client figures out if the typed password exists or not. Really cool, privacy-preserving anonymity model. So they helped develop that back with Janard Ali, I think in about 2018. Janard IC April has moved on to other things, but he was awesome in helping us get that set up. We have grown and grown that service. Cloudflare provides it for free to the community, which is good on them. That is awesome. And last year, they spoke about something cool that they had implemented. Now I'm going to find the correct term. It's effectively leaked credential. What do they call it? Leaked credential check. I've got to go back to the start. I'm finding the purpose of comparing against leaked data. Okay, that goes back to that one. It's here in the comments while it's loading. Stephen, super tempted to drive to Oxford. No, my work had been hoping you'd come up to Cambridge. I did hear about someone, yeah. Are you Redgate, Stephen? Because Redgate had said, if you go to Cambridge, I have been to Cambridge before and seen Redgate in Cambridge, but obviously that was a while ago. So anyway, mate, I'm flying to the other side of the world. It's not far to go for you. Okay, yeah, got you. All right. Milford, I go out trying to defend my network connections to the best of my abilities ages ago. The attack surface is just way too big for me. Yeah, and like this is the value proposition of Cloudflare. This is in response to James's message. I use Cloudflare for my home lab. It stopped a bunch of credential stuffing attacks on my home VPN. They actually started slowing down my network several times in the past. Now, just because this is part of the story I'm going to tell, as a recap of Cloudflare's value proposition, they're a reverse proxy. So you have your website that sits on a server somewhere in the world. Let's keep it simple. One server somewhere in the world. Have I Been Pwned sits on a server in the West US data center. We route traffic through Cloudflare, which means they control all of our DNS. They have some funky networking tricks, let's just call it that for the sake of simplicity, whereby no matter where you are in the world, you connect to the Cloudflare edge node that's closest to you. There are more than 300 edge nodes around the world. So what it means is that for me as the guy running the service, I put it out there, put it behind Cloudflare, and then no matter where you are in the world, you connect to a Cloudflare edge node that's close to you. There's one up the road here in Brisbane. There is one, there's probably many in London. They've got an office in London. Why am I going there next week? All right, different story. I'm sure there's one in Reykjavik and there's one in Dublin, everywhere else we go. And the value proposition of connecting somewhere really close to you is that you can get a very fast response from something like Cache. Now also, every one of those edge nodes can inspect traffic and apply security rules. And this is a really, really critical thing because how do you do that in an era of ubiquitous transport layer security? We've got the padlock, everything is encrypted. How can they see the traffic? And again, this is a key part of where things have gone off the rails the last few days. When you make a request to Have I Been Pwned, let's say you're doing a domain search on Have I Been Pwned and you're adding that domain to your dashboard. You're going to have to talk to the database. We can't just serve all that from Cache. Your request is encrypted on your device. It goes to Cloudflare's edge node close to you. That's where TLS initially terminates. It decrypts the traffic. It looks at the traffic. It then re-encrypts the traffic, sends it to the origin server, and then the server responds and the same thing happens the other way. They are able to inspect traffic. That's the value proposition. And everyone putting their website behind it with the expectation of getting anything from caching on the edge through to using their WAF tools to be able to look for malicious requests through to doing anything that involves them being able to inspect what's in the traffic, that is how it works. And for the longest time, we've had these issues pop up where people will be like, hang on a second, they're breaking encryption. Like, no, they're not. That's just where the encryption ends, and then it gets re-encrypted, and then it gets like that's literally the way the service works. And then people say, "Well, I thought my data was encrypted all the way." Well, first of all, the normal everyday people using the service are not giving that a second thought. If you're saying that as a site operator, if you're saying that as someone who's a subject matter expert and you're thinking that the padlock somehow implies that your data is encrypted all the way to where it sits at rest, well, you're wrong because it was never like that. You get assurance that you're going to have encryption and as a result, confidentiality, integrity, and all the other bits between your device and some point where it terminates. And even if you did have encryption all the way to your origin service, the padlock doesn't tell you what happens after that. It doesn't tell you if the data is encrypted when it's sent to the database. It doesn't tell you if it's encrypted when there's an API call made from the web app out to some other service. It was never meant to do that. It only does that bit. And the bits behind that are not clear. That's the nature of the internet. There's lots of moving parts. Now, I feel like we've been having this discussion How long have I been having it for? For a very long time, because I wrote a blog post called Cloudflare SSL. Well, put it this way, it was that bloody long ago I was calling it SSL and not TLS. Cloudflare, SSL, and unhealthy security absolutism. And the unhealthy security absolutism, which I put in the description for this weekly video as well, was effectively where people were saying, if it is not encrypted all the way, then it's no good. But again, like if it was encrypted all the way, they couldn't inspect the traffic and they couldn't do the WAF things and the cache things and all the other bits and pieces that they do. So everyone understand they sit there in the middle by design. People putting their services behind that have an expectation that they will be able to do things that require them to be able to do the decryption bit. Right, now leads us to, what's the correct word here? Leaked password notification, leaked credential check. Back in June last year, they announced this. And this is something that that does use our data as well for Have I Been Pwned, among other sources of data. And that their value proposition is essentially this. Now that we all understand that they sit in the middle of the traffic and they are able to inspect the traffic as people browse the target website, if someone is logging on to a target website and their credentials are flowing through Cloudflare's infrastructure, then Cloudflare can see the credentials. Now, there's a parallel thing here around, are they allowed to do it, but what about privacy? But GDPR. GDPR always seems like the hammer, and then everyone's just looking for a nail to hit with it. One would imagine an organization the size of Cloudflare has enough lawyers to ensure that when you sign up and you put your services through them, that all of the relevant boxes around the fact that they can inspect traffic are checked. And just as a recap of the size of Cloudflare as well, I think they're saying here it's effectively 20% of the world's websites that run through there. Let's see if it was 20. Was it 20%? Is that in the blog post? I'm going to search for percent. Percent, there are different percents. Oh no, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong page. Let's try here. Now we'll find percent. Here you go. With 30 million internet properties comprising some 20% of the web. 20% of the web is routed through Cloudflare, which is massive. Separate argument to be had about monopolies and everything else. But let's just recognize it is huge. And I think I raised that point because, like, I'm sure they have enough lawyers writing enough terms and conditions that they have thought about ticking the appropriate boxes such that when people put their websites behind Cloudflare, it is well and truly all tied up with a nice bow that Cloudflare is able to inspect the traffic. Anywho, where were we? Leak credential check. So let me look at the comments because there's a lot of stuff flying through here, and then we'll talk about how they do this and where people lost their mind. James says the free Cloudflare tier is generous too. One of the reasons I started using them is back in the day, it was the fastest, easiest way to get the padlock icon. Let's just call it that. The padlock icon in your browser made it super easy to implement SSL/TLS. And I did a video series just off my own back. It wasn't commercial. I just thought it was interesting, called HTTPS is Easy. It's probably still there. HTTPS is easy.com. That itself sits behind Cloudflare. Yeah, here we go. Oh, how long ago was it I did that? There's YouTube videos. There'll be dates on those. 6 years ago. Oh. It's actually a little bit more than that. June 2018. Let's call it almost 7 years ago. So, yeah, super easy. And free as well. Everyone likes free. Thomas says, funky networking tricks, which I recently learned, can make it and other CDNs look like malware using fast fluxing. The funky network tricks do then carry with it all sorts of other issues. One of them is that it is very easy to front malicious things when you have access to a service like Cloudflare. It's one of the massive criticisms of Cloudflare is that there's nasty stuff behind there, whether it be stuff that's malicious content or stuff which is just content that we don't like. They had a lot of controversy must have been about 2018 because of the Daily Stormer, the white supremacist website that was running behind Cloudflare. And there's this whole other massive discussion that we're not going to fit in the rest of this show around what is their responsibility for content that is legal but recalcitrant. Massive, big issue over there. So there are issues there. As Scott says, crazy how people don't understand the basics of things they use. Milford says, I suspect the criticism goes to the heart of the issue, not the structural cleverness of Edge. I think it's very much going to the philosophy of it. I will get more into that in a sec. Scott says the key phrase is transparent encryption, and it's in the name, TLS. Transport encryption. As Scott says, it's in the name, TLS, transport layer security. It only provides protection on the network, not on the server, and it only provides protection up to the point where it terminates as well, which is, again, where people have the issue. Okay, let's go on. Credentials. So if they can sit in the middle and look at the credentials that are being submitted to a website, they can start to do some cool value-add stuff. And what they're doing with their leaked password check here is that when someone's submitting the form to log on to a website and that request comes through, encrypted from the client through to Cloudflare Edge node, and they are then able to inspect the request and do all of the WAF things that they're already there for and the caching things are already there for and the rate limits and all the rest of it, they can also look at that password and they can apply the same logic that we're using with k-anonymity to do the 10 billion searches a month with home passwords. They can see whether that password has been in a data breach before. And they can do it super fast, and then they can add a request header such that when that request is then routed onto the origin, you've got a header somewhere. I'm pretty sure that's how they do it. Let's have a look. Search for header. I'd have to read the technical bits. How did they do that? There's a link through to the details. Let's imagine it's a header. I'm quite sure it's there. Add the header so that when you're writing your code for running on your origin server and you're receiving that authentication request, not only can you get the username and password, which again is in plain text by then because it's on your origin server, after, as Scott has said, the transport component finishes and is decrypted, but you can look at that request header and know whether that password has been in a data breach before. Now, you could do the same thing with pwned passwords by getting the request through and then making an outbound request to do the pwned passwords check, but that's going to add latency. You're then going to have to make an outbound request back to Cloudflare's infrastructure to get that response. So for them, being able to do it on the fly is super cool. I'm happy with that. I was excited about that when they launched it in the middle of last year. So where has it all gone wrong this week? It's all gone wrong this week because they wrote a blog post reporting on what they had observed. Observed. Now, when I initially saw this, I was just interested in the figures because I know how it works. Based on Cloudflare's observed traffic between September and November 2024, 41% of successful logins across websites protected by Cloudflare involved compromised passwords. That is an interesting statistic. 41% of successful logins are using a password that's been in a data breach before. In other words, 41% of logins are at some degree of greater risk than the remaining 59%. I think that's interesting. They talk about scope of analysis. They've got some charts, which are nice, some graphs, some flows here about stuff, some Cloudflare value proposition. It's obviously a marketing effort on their behalf too. Happy days, no problem with that. and then here's where it gets political, because it's always political these days. I am finding myself spread across X, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. And there are very different people on all of these. Now, nobody on X seemed to mind this. Nobody in Blue Sky seemed to mind this. But then a bunch of people on Mastodon were very upset. And the upsetness seems to be centered around the fact that people were surprised that Cloudflare was able to do this. And there seems to be some misinterpretation that they have gone too far in accessing people's passwords or something to that effect. Now, before I delve in there further, I do think that there are some optical problems, as they would say, with the way this has been written, evidently based on the feedback. And probably it could have been clearer up front around everything from how they're able to do this to the fact that the site owners are agreeing to somewhere in the terms and conditions that allows them to do this, and that there is no privacy risk around using the k-anonymity style models. It is there in the blog post, and some of the discussions I've had with people, they're like, well, they didn't say this or say that. So yeah, it's in the blog post. Apparently one thing wasn't originally in the blog post, but then it was in there by the time I read it, and then people were upset about that as well. So I'm angry this isn't in the blog post. All right, here it is. I'm angry it's now in the blog post, and they didn't say in the blog post after they fixed it that before they hadn't. Oh, for fuck's sake, like, where does it? Oh. Anyway, so there's some contention around that. There's a lot of argument then around whether or not they should be able to do this, whether or not they're legally able to do this, because passwords are PII. They're not, but I'm going to come back to that. And if you go and read some of my engagements on Mastodon, you'll see these discussions. I just think that there's sort of a sensitivity around passwords where on Cloudflare's end, they've got to be a bit more cautious about how they communicate this. And on the end of people commentating on it, they've got to have some understanding of the technical implementation of this, and also the fact that Cloudflare inevitably have ticked off the legal boxes they need to be able to intercept traffic, given that that is their entire value proposition. The bit about PII, I had a couple of people argue that passwords are PII. Now, I think the hint to the reason why I believe this, I'm going to caveat it, I believe this is wrong, is that PII is personally identifiable information, information that can be used to reasonably identify a person, an email address, a name in combination with other factors. John Smith can't reasonably identify one person. In combination with the physical address, it can. An IP address is relatively unique. A password is not. It's personal information. It's your information in the same way as if you were to enter your favorite color into a website, that is personal information. But if you see blue, you're not like, oh, that's definitely Troy. You're going through a database. Someone likes blue. Ah, that's Troy. So, no, it's not. Might be. Could be. But what if someone enters, when the website asks for your favorite color, and it says, Troy Hunt at this address with this IP address and this email address likes blue. Well, that's a different story. But the request for the favorite color alone is not the thing that makes it personally identifiable. And if you do go through the Mastodon thread, there's a couple of folks there sort of saying, GDPR. Again, everyone uses GDPR as a hammer. I know you're very fond of that in your corner of the world. There are other privacy laws in other parts of the world as well, and a lot of them do align around things like what is sensitive data, medical information, specifically pathology reports or doctors' blood. These sorts of things are very clearly defined as a particular class of data. But when pushed, and I said to people, can you point me to the bit which says that passwords are PII, and I get sent a link, and I search through the page. Well, the word password doesn't appear anywhere. Oh, it's implied. No, it's not implied. Being personal data doesn't make it personally identifiable. And the reason we went down this rabbit hole is because there was concern that Cloudflare were taking something that could identify individuals and ultimately compromise their privacy by doing what they're doing. And it just simply doesn't work that way. Someone suggested that Cloudflare had engaged me to respond on this or paid me or something to that effect, which is also bullshit. It doesn't work that way. It's a little bit like the HTTPS is easy thing before, nearly 6 years ago, where it's like, I have an opinion on this and I'm going to put that forward and here it is. So no, it is not a Cloudflare shill. But I think Scott would pretty much be on the, Scott's saying, ha ha ha, someone did say GDPR. Yeah, right. So I think Scott's reading the thread. Like, you read the thread, and feel free to chime in here with your own comments on this, mate. But you just get that tone. Now, to go back to the bit about the social platforms and the politicization, it does feel to often be the way that the folks that have gone to Mastodon get very cranky about this stuff in just the same way that the folks that went to Blue Sky get particularly cranky about Elon. Isn't it weird at the moment? So they're doing to people like burning Tesla. It's not so much that the keying Teslas and burning superchargers and everything, which is just dumb. It's seeing people on the other side of the political spectrum then being defensive of the people doing that. Well, they're very upset because Elon. The world's gone mad. Anyway, g'day, Wayne. Thanks for coming. Stefan, right, g'day, mate. We're just finishing on the Cloudflare. I know you've been looking at some of the Cloudflare stuff this week as well, around the leaked credential. Yeah, people got very upset about that. There was one person in particular. Again, if you go back through the thread, you seem to have a lot of trouble having a discussion without swearing. Now, we all do this from time to time, but as I said at one point in time in the discussion, he seems to have started with the premise of fuck Cloudflare and then just worked backwards. It's like, this is my view. Let me find ways to support my view. And even as the discussion progresses, and it's very clear that, yes, of course, they have the ability to inspect traffic. And of course, they would have had the legal right to do so. And people would have opted into that even if you didn't read the terms and conditions. If you're trying to find reasons to support your view of not liking the organization, and there are many reasons people don't like Cloudflare. People call it crime flare because it can sit in front of malicious websites. Again, we had the discussion about sitting in front of otherwise legally operating but recalcitrant services that we don't like. Again, a whole other discussion. But clearly people wanted to work backwards and find a way of being upset with Cloud. I kind of feel like the same people, Cloudflare could turn around tomorrow, solve world hunger, and they'd be pissed. They'd be really pissed. James, an Aussie complaining about swearing. I thought that's how you all said hello. I can say how we say hello, but I probably shouldn't say it on this video. Times and places. I think when you're having a discussion on a public forum and you're trying to articulate a point around what is ultimately a combination of technical implications or implementations, privacy concerns, legal terminology, I don't think that it really helps the conversation to be using abusive language, particularly not in the angry sense. Lots of different ways of swearing, which are more light-hearted and fun. It's pretty much mandatory here in Australia. Note to self, stop doing that before I go to Oxford next week. Alrighty. Yeah, so that's Cloudflare. I will fault them on one thing, just to show everyone I'm not a Cloudflare shill. I went and checked my Cloudflare assets that I've had there for quite some time, and the leaked credential check was not enabled. In fact, we can do this now. So if I go, let's pick something here. Let's pick a website I've had there for a while. Let's go to scotthelmsucks.com. That's a popular site. Scotthelmsucks.com. Let's to make sure that no one typos that, I'll drop it in the chat. So if we go there, you're going to see a very insightful message on the website. If I go into my security settings on Cloudflare, and I go into settings, security settings. Where's the leaked credential check? Is it there? Or is it somewhere else? Switch between dashboards. If you want to try the new dashboard later on, press the try new dashboard. Let's try the new dashboard. Maybe it's there. This feels like the Azure portal all over again. Ooh, all settings. Oh, that's handy. That's actually better. Where is that setting? Let me pick another Cloudflare property. I definitely know it's not turned on, which is troyhunt.com, which is also here. Now, I have no authentication going onto troyhunt.com anyway, so it would sort of be pointless to have that over there. Let's have a look. Leaked credential detection is off. I wonder if it's because TroyHunt.com is on Enterprise and Scott Helm Sucks is not. I don't think there's a lot of point in putting him on Enterprise there. Okay. That could have been my interpretation. Anyway, here's the bit where I will give them some criticism. Apparently, this is on by default on the free tier. And I had a sudden recollection where 1Password does a similar thing insofar as 1Password has their Watchtower feature. And that plugs into Pwned passwords and it's able to take all of the passwords and using the same anonymity model, so it doesn't disclose anything about the password itself, anything usable. It can check every single one of your passwords in your password manager to see if it's been exposed before. My recollection is that they had that on by default to begin with, and then probably based on community feedback, they went, no, we should leave the, even though there's not a privacy risk, we should turn that off and then give people the ability to turn it on, and then we'll explain how it works if they want to turn it on. And I do think that is what Cloudflare should do, particularly based on the feedback we saw. Even though I don't agree with it all, I think that when you're dealing with a privacy-related thing like this, you're better off erring on the side of caution. But honestly, that and potentially not being clear enough in their wording to make sure that people understood it wasn't a privacy risk is the only thing I can fault them on. And I think that even if they did all that, there'd still be a bunch of people that are very cranky because they're working backwards from Cloudflare. Okay. I'm just glad. Oh yeah, I had references for why Scott sucks. That was you in the tree, wasn't it? Oh, dude, I've got so much more material now. How long ago did I do this? Oh yeah. That was funny. All right. Go and watch that later. Oh, and you on the wakeboard as well. Oh, shit. Oh, that hurt. Oh, nice. Okay. What was next? I want to be serious here. I know I got something. Oh, no, data breaches. Yes, data breaches. 2 data breaches this week. And in all honesty, we have been very, very focused on a combination of getting ready for this trip and doing the things I needed to before going on this trip. 2 of which included doing my Microsoft Regional Director renewal stuff I have to do every 2 years, and my Microsoft MVP renewal stuff I have to do every 1 year. I know Scott and Stefan have got that probably on their agenda too. I just wanted to have all of that out because it was due by the end of the month. So a lot of time went on that. A lot of time gone on the Have I Been Pwned UX stuff as well, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. I did get 2 data breaches out. Now, one of those was quite an odd one, Lexipol. I'll explain why it's odd in a moment. Well, part of the reason it's odd is that it's attributed to puppy girl hacker Polycule. Now, here's the water. This is sometimes the way with hackers, or I suspect in this case they would classify themselves as hacktivists, because they have some activist-related reasons for why they didn't like the company. But if I go to lexipol.com, we make performance excellence the heartbeat of public safety. Our mission-critical tools ensure the well-being and effectiveness of the public servants who safeguard communities. So this is a service which creates policy manuals, hence the poll part. Is that the poll part, or is police the poll part of Lexipol? I don't know. Anyway, they do a bunch of policy documents that everything from like law enforcement agencies to first responders to fire crews, I believe predominantly in the US, I'm not sure if it's exclusive in the US, use. Oh, here we go. Law enforcement, fire and rescue, corrections, EMS, local government. Now, they create a lot of this material. The hacktivist angle on this is that puppy girl hacker Polycule, their position here on this is anonymous group of hackers leaked more than 8,500 files from the first responder training company Lexipol. Now this goes back to last month. So why did they do this? They had a reason. As well as emails, phone numbers, hence the Have I Been Pwned connection, over 600,000 records in there. They then published this data publicly. This is very, very public. The group told the Daily Dot in a statement they chose to target Lexipol because there are not enough hacks against the police. So we took matters into our own paws. Is that a good reason? we hacked them because there are not many hacks, or not enough hacks against them. I seem to recall from memory, it was a little bit more, there were more activist-related reasons that I read somewhere. Where was it? Lots of stuff. Yeah, there's obviously some contention. PuppyGirl Hacker Polycle is not known to be formally connected with other previous data breaches, but hacker groups with fuzzy monikers are not in short supply. Last summer, the famed gay furry hackers, SiegeSec, known for attacking government websites and cheekily demanding research into IRL catgirls. Anyway, yeah, it attracts all kinds, this industry. So that's going to have been pwned. That I flagged as sensitive. And the reason I flagged it as sensitive is that there was a very significant skew of law enforcement in that data set. And in fact, I did go through a verification process, an offline verification process. I couldn't find an enumeration vector that made it easy to see whether or not someone had an account. Due to the nature of it and the fact that it's policing manuals and so on, I pinged a bunch of Have I Been Pwned subscribers in there and said, look, your data's turned up in here. Is this your data? Is it legit? And most of the replies I got were from police officers in the US. So good on them for being Have I Been Pwned subscribers as well. I flagged it as sensitive because this is a group that is at higher risk. And I guess that's sort of one of the triggers that I use for flagging a breach as sensitive. So whether you're someone in Ashley Madison, who you are now at high risk, or if it's someone who has a religious affiliation or a political affiliation, if it's anywhere in the space of sensitive PII, like actual PII, not passwords, mate. The thing that had me a little bit worried about law enforcement officers is that they do tend to get targeted more as a result of their job. Whether that's right or wrong in different circumstances is a totally different issue. I just don't want Have I Been Pwned to be the vector by which someone, let's say, takes a cop's email address and plugs it into Have I Been Pwned and then figures out a lot more personal information about them. So that's why that one is sensitive. Now we'll go on the next one in a sec. The comments here. Yep, nothing new. Next one here is the gazillionth spyware service to have a data breach lately, SpyX. Now I say gazillionth, even when I look at the front page of Have I Been Pwned at the moment, where we see the 10 most recent data breaches, 4 of them are spyware companies. Working in chronological order: Coco Spy, Spy IC, Spyzy, and now SpyX. Now, interestingly, SpyX is that large? Oh, actually, that's just a little bit larger than Coco Spy. Coco Spy was 1.8 million unique accounts. SpyX was just under 2. Now, I worked with Zach Whitaker on this, journalist at TechCrunch. Zach has covered a lot of spyware breaches in the past. Zach's preferred term to use is stalkerware, because inevitably there is a bunch of it, which is used for stalking people. And again, like the challenge we got here is that the value proposition that is put forward for this class of software is that it can be used to say, monitor your children. Because who doesn't want to monitor their children? Well, me. Okay, for one. But this is the way it's put. I'm just making sure I remember what I'm talking about here, and then I'll load up the SpyX page here. The best phone monitoring software for parental control. Know everything. Know everything happens. Just know this is bad English. Know everything happens on your kids' cell phones or tablet without installing an app. Set up monitoring in just 2 minutes. Now, how do you do this without installing an app? Because this is where things get kind of interesting. One of the ways that spyware can spy is that you just give it the iCloud credentials, and it connects directly to the iCloud, and then it grabs everything that gets synced to iCloud. I mean, what could go wrong with that? The data breach has a large number of iCloud credentials in plain text. So this is your Apple account, Apple email, Apple password. And I know it's correct because I pinged a bunch of Have I Been Pwned subscribers on this one. I was like, hey, I just want to make sure this is what it looks like. And they're like, yep, that is what it looks like. Now, curiously, a bunch of people I pinged on this were like, yeah, we signed up, we tried to use it, it didn't work, so we no longer use it. The people that responded, now maybe they wouldn't respond if they were of the more stalkerish kind, but the people that responded predominantly said they were setting this up to monitor their kids. That's in the legal bucket. We'll get to the illegal bucket in a moment. A reliable parental control app, apparently not, lets you monitor over 40 essential activities on a child's phone, ensuring their safety at all times. Now, I mean, like, look at what's being tracked here. Calls and SMS. Use SpyX to know exactly who your child is messaging and calling, as well as the context list and deleted message history in the target's phone. Well, we pivoted very quickly from child there, didn't we? Child just became target. Social media apps monitor your child's social media activities, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, WhatsApp, and more. Keylogger. Monitor every keystroke and tap to ensure your child's safety. We're back to child. We've pivoted from target back to child. Photos and videos. Keep track of media stored in the cloud and shared through social apps. You can easily view their phone photos and videos remotely. Now, how does this magic work? Well, it puts it in their cloud, where it then ends up in a data breach. Now, this data breach did not have that information in it. I didn't see photos and other things like that. We have seen other data breaches of other spyware / stalkerware apps that have had a lot of very personal things in it. Let's just say that. And I have seen these with my own eyes. And this is the risk that anyone takes on board when they use an app of this kind. So yeah, look, it's just a super shitty business model. We know empirically that it is regularly used. This class of application, of which I assume SpyX is included in this, these sorts of things are regularly used for non-consensual tracking of other parties, particularly in domestic violence sort of scenarios. And one of the reasons we know that is that when MSpy had their data breach, it was their Zendesk logs that got leaked. And in the Zendesk logs was all of this stuff around people trying to install the software, not just on someone's device so they can't see it, no, maybe it's a child, but on my wife's device or on my husband's device. Multiple references to, I think my partner is having an affair. How can I track them without them knowing? It's just a shitty, shitty business model. And it's legal too. This is what drives me nuts. Oh, this is fun. So there's a comparison further down. Why SpyX is the only one to try. Now, SpyX, this is like stalkerware bingo. SpyX is being compared here to SpyIC, one of the last 10 data breaches and have I been pwned. They're also being compared to MSpy, also a recent data breach in Have I Been Pwned, not just once, but I think we're in there either 2 or 3 times. The third comparison here, SpyX versus KidsGuard Pro. I will make some space in Have I Been Pwned for KidsGuard Pro. They're not there yet. Who else? XNSpy, make space for them too. Easy, yep, make space for them. UMobex, how many are there? AutoForward. And then we're back around to SpyIC. Didn't we do SpyIC already? Number 1 was SpyIC. Both number 1 and number 6 are SpyIC. It's almost like these companies misrepresent things. Yeah, look, you go down here. Helping protect teenage kids from bullying. Wonder if your daughter is in a healthy relationship. Now it's getting weird. Concerned about the mental health of elders. Also weird. Are you worried about online fraud targeting? Mate, I'm worried about you targeting elders. Jeez. Anyway, so they're in there. Right. Where are the comments here? Thomas says, Spy being the name of a kid's monitoring app upsets me just a little tiny bit. But this is the thing. It's like they're constantly using the word spy. I mean, monitoring is a different story. And I do wonder how conscious the decision is to use the word spy. Do they get more hits from people saying, how do I spy on my partner? As opposed to, how do I monitor my child? It super sucks. I missed a bunch of comments here. Scott says, I love when Zach quotes people with snark. Quote, we did not get breached, said the company representatives, citing no evidence. But that's not on well, where are we up to? SpyX, is it? Because he didn't get a response from the company, which was part of the problem. Is that here? We did. No. So where did you pull that one from? Or maybe that's just a general, this is Zach's style. Milford says, in all fairness, that's like Trump saying, we did not invade Zimbabwe, citing no evidence. I think it's, yeah, so Scott's more like a general quote. I feel like that's a more general thing, particularly in some parts of the world where to bridge the gap between Scott and James here, it's a company saying, we did not get breached, citing no evidence. Meanwhile, we're saying you did get breached, here's the evidence. So, yeah, maybe no explanation for the evidence is more about it. James says, just Troy says, law enforcement have to watch their backs a bit more. I recommend you use something like Delete Me. At least it makes it more difficult. I've had discussions, and Scott, we can have this chat offline, but I've had discussions with law enforcement before in a very well-known agency where someone did get targeted as a result of the work they were doing. And I was sitting there having a chat to the guy, I think it was like over dinner or something. And like, it was genuinely stressful for them because these are people who put their pants on one leg at a time and go to work and try and do a job to make the world a better place. And then they get targeted by anonymous adversaries, you know, when they're just trying to do their job. So yeah, it's super shitty for those guys. Milford, no, they don't. They have the law on their side. In the event it turned into a gangster-style war, they have the edge. And for far more group law, yeah, not sure exactly what that angle is. What else is here? Kim says, SpyX bad. Yep. How do parents manage kids' devices and online activities using the native parental controls? Also, I have a blog post about this. There are native controls in all of the popular operating systems. I have iThings. There are family controls that will not show you their photos and their text messages, but will let you set screen times for the amount of time that can be spent or what time of day they can pick it up. Are they allowed to have conversations with new people? A whole bunch of other things. Dropping a link into the chat here about my blog post from 2020, Sharenting, BYOD and Kids Online, 10 Digital Tips for Modern Day Parents. And one of the big things on there, if this is a genuine question here, is actually like being around your kids when they use devices. And I know by virtue of them being mobile, you're not going to be there a lot of the time, but it is guiding them in the direction of what is healthy device use. And that's certainly a big thing for Charlotte and I with our kids at 12 and 15 as well. Anything more? Or are we going on to... Milford says, why are parents managing their kids' devices? Would you really want to be tied to a tree like a dog back in the 60s? I'd suggest that's going a little bit further than what was meant by that. What I will say is, in the various reporting I've done on spyware incidents, there have been a few occasions where I could justify parents having this sort of thing on their device, recognizing that every one of these decisions is like a risk and reward thing. Massive risks. I think it's a bad idea in about 99% of cases. The remaining 1% of cases is when people have said things like, my kid has all sorts of mental issues that put them at a very high risk, or they've got a drug addiction, or they've got something where having visibility into what they do on their device might actually be a life-saving thing. So I'm sympathetic in that 1% of cases. But if you cut out 99% of the business of these organizations, I don't think they'd exist anymore, which I don't think is a bad thing, if I'm completely honest. So, yeah, there's that. Kim's been looking to Custodio and Bark in the last month. Yeah, I don't know those. He says, he or she says, my son hacked Microsoft Family Safety on his PC when he was 10. Well, first of all, if he can genuinely do that, go to Microsoft and get yourself a nice bug bounty. I suspect that's hack in the very liberal sense of the word. I'll give you an example of how my son hacked around the parental controls on iOS. he wanted to keep watching YouTube after YouTube was on the ban list after a certain time of day, and he found that if you messaged the YouTube link to someone, you could watch in the message app, you could watch YouTube because it had effectively had an in-app player, and that wasn't subject to the parental controls of the dedicated standalone YouTube app. Good on him, proud parenting moment. And then we had a discussion about when you should be watching YouTube. Milford says, I'm not suggesting it's personal or there aren't exceptions. I'm just saying it's ridiculous at scale. We're securing the planet into complete immobility and lack of freedom and spontaneity. Yeah, look, I agree with that. I would argue that's also a very cultural thing. We had a discussion here just the other day. I can't remember who it was with. But if you've ever been, assuming most of you are probably like in the UK and Australia and places that are very, very similar. Let's say you went out with your baby in a pram and you wanted to have a coffee. You know, you take the baby into the coffee shop and you keep a good eye on them in case someone stole the baby. And now in Norway, and it's probably the same, Stefan can confirm in Iceland, because a lot of the Nordics are very similar, you see a whole bunch of parents going out to the coffee shop, they park the pram out the front. It's minus whatever. It was Norway. You park the pram out the front, baby's wrapped up, and then you all go to the coffee shop and you have a coffee and you come back out and the baby's still there, which just like blows my mind. But that's normal. Or you go to the playground and all the parents are not hovering around waiting to catch the child when they fall off the swings, but they're over there having a coffee and the kids are doing their own thing. Very different thing there. I feel like I'm much more on that sort of Nordic scale of stuff. I saw an interview with Jimmy Carr recently, who's obviously a comedian and he's always doing a lot of funny, edgy stuff. But for some reason, this was a more serious interview, and the interviewer was talking about kids, and they said something to the effect of, how much freedom or should you give your children? And his response was as much as they can handle. And I think that's a really good response. Just yesterday, we were having the, Chris says, my daughter did the same thing to avoid the YouTube block on iOS, proud father moment. I was talking to our 12-year-old daughter, and I said, do you think you're ready to fly yourself to Norway on your own? Our son did this last year at 14. And we did that after we felt he was ready to do that. And she was like, not really sure. But I think when we have a need to do that and we feel she's ready, which might be at the end of the year, for argument's sake, when she's 13, be like, yep, fine, do it. Like, what's going to happen? You get lost in Dubai and you need help in the airport. You can't accidentally slip out into the street. You'll be fine. All right, last thing here before we wrap it up, because we're an hour in already. The Have I Been Pwned UX stuff. So we have been forging ahead on this. We have Ingeborg in Iceland doing all of the static front end. If we head on over to preview, I'll drop this in the chat as well, preview.haveibeenpwned.com. we will see the current state of the front end. There, it is static. It will not hit data on the back end. You can put in a string that matches an email address and click on check, and you'll see the results come back. We've got the About Us that's in there. The terms of use are in there. The domain search pages are in there. We've got a whole bunch of different paradigms that we have now built into this new model, which is really cool. And what we're doing is we're just getting to the point where the static site can represent enough of what needs to actually be integrated into the live running site that we are, I think Stefan might have already done this, but we're branching the code base of the actual live site. We'll have a private deployable website that we can keep checking. We're making it private because this is literally integration work, and I don't know how much we're going to screw it up. We'll keep preview.haveibeenpwned.com public, and we'll just start baking this in. And that the goal is, I forget what date we said, Stefan, but it's like around the middle of May is to have all of this live. And I think we'll be able to do that. We've got a bit of stuff coming out because Stefan's got MVP Summit next week. I've got a month now of travel, including hanging out in Iceland with you, Stefan. But we'll keep iterating on this. And we do have an open source repository with all of this code. We have an issues list. We have a discussions list. We're inviting people to contribute to that. We're getting a lot of good stuff. It's just simple things like, on the About page, when you're looking at it in mobile view, the social icons, the spacing isn't right. Okay, that's minor, but thank you for finding that now and creating an issue that Ingeborg can now go and fix, and it saves us from having to do it later on, potentially when it's live, and then we're checking things more rigorously. So go and check that out. I feel like there are obviously things missing, but I feel like what we really want to do as part of this is to make sure that we get new features, new stuff in there. So I want to see stuff like more visualizations of data breaches. We've got a dedicated breach page where for every individual breach, we end up having a lot more information. We're going to have some recommended actions. I think we're going to have some other partners on that page in the right context where they make sense. That's the sort of stuff I want to get, like more useful stuff for people. So please, if you have ideas to that effect, go and drop them in the issues or discussions log. Last bits here, Scott, I've seen your messages. I'll give you a call after this. Wayne says, love the animated logo when adding a domain. Yeah, me too. And I don't know why I love this so much, but if you go to the domain search page and click on verify new domain and you put in, like example.com, and then you click on verify now, that new logo, just the icon part, animates. Is that, how's he done that? Like, it's really cool. This is what I've loved about the work that Ingeborg is doing, where he's taking initiative to go and do often just little stuff like that. But I see it and it's like, this just immediately clicks with me, and I'm really, really stoked about that. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like. It just feels nice. Fritz says it's a nice spacious layout and easy on the eyes. Milford, I'm already breached. Well, I didn't even know I was registered on 2 out of 3 of those at the time. Front end looks pro, badass. Cheers, Troy. Thank you, mate. That's really good. All right, so Milford says color dating app. Is that a joke? No, it's a real thing. It's copied off the one that's in production. Yeah. Anyway, all right, folks. I'm going to wrap it up there. I will be in Iceland this time next week. So I'll do from somewhere in Iceland. I won't be in Reykjavik. We're going to go and actually see some sites over the end of the week and the weekend before we do the work stuff in Reykjavik after that. So thanks very much, folks. I'll see you from a place I've never been before. That'll be cool. All right. Where'd my stop button go?